I was going to say that, there's like this idea that, everybody gets caught up in this right or wrong kind of scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this the right way or is that the right way? Is this the wrong way or is that the wrong way? And everybody kind of like builds up these walls around their point of view, which is, it might be true for them, but it doesn't mean it's true for someone else.
Yeah.
And then everybody's looking for the right way, and I think and then what happens is they just don't sort of pay attention to the process that's happening, or how they were 5 years ago compared to now, and where they'll be in 5 years is different, right? Because your body is changing while you're doing the practice, and it's evolving, and then so the postures are changing, your body's changing, it all starts mixing together, and so, I mean, it's a little off point of what your original question was, but...
But you could also mix up and say, is there a healthy way and an unhealthy way? I think people, that's when they're saying right and wrong way, that's what they're sort of thinking also, maybe.
Yeah, and so that leads to trying to predict the future. Like, oh, don't ever do that, because if you do that, then that will happen. How do you know? I mean, there are some things that we could that lean more in that direction that are a little more obvious. But, I come back to this idea that the big yoga experiment is happening now.
Uh-huh.
It's not like it happened 100 years ago, and now we're dealing with the after effects of it. We're in it, and we're creating it.
Yeah, and it's still going on.
Yeah, it's still going on. So we don't know what will happen to people who've done, let's say, the Ashtanga practice for 45 years. What their body's going to be like. Maybe all their joints will be overly open, and they'll all end up in trouble. I hope not. I'm not saying I think that's going to happen, but
But
the truth is we don't know.
Yeah.
We just don't know. So predicting the future, that's trouble by itself. And having said that, of course, we need to try, to some degree, to prevent, injuries from happening. And, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think when we bring up the difference between sides issues and stuff like that, I think a lot of people feel in their body either lopsided or one side is so much more open than the other, so they feel unbalanced.
Yeah.
And then, the practice doesn't seem to, if you do the symmetrical on each side and just floating those imbalances just seem to stay. It's more flexible, but still it just seems to carry on like that.
Right. So in order to deal with those kinds of imbalances, you'd have to, let's call it a diagnosis. You'd have to diagnose what the problem really is and be as close to the truth as possible. And then you would have to take the right course of action to correct for that. And then, it's like a diagnosis even from a medical doctor who's gone through loads of training, and after many years, they're making an educated guess. Yeah. And that's where the rigidness sets in at first. That's the right or wrong part. Oh, this is the right way to proceed forward, but your body's going to start to change once you go off on that path. And so you might need to adapt along that therapeutic pathway. And
can it be part of the research, though? I'm trying to open this hip a little bit to even up the other one and see where that goes with me. That's sort of...
yeah, you can do that, sure. It's kind of like, we seem to be talking about Ashtanga anyway with the sort of, right side, left side, and this regimented thing. And of course, Guruji's... I always looked back to Yogamala as sort of this purist sort of view into Guruji's mind and ideas about the practice. Because it was before the Westerners arrived, it was before it got popular, it was before anybody added on their story to what he was saying. Granted, it was translated from Kannada to English, but Guruji never says 5 breaths, or 8 breaths, or 10 breaths. He says breathe as much as possible. So then there's a footnote that says, if you have a particular problem, it doesn't particularly say an anatomical, imbalance, but if you have a problem related to a posture, then stay in it longer. Otherwise, 5 to 8 breaths is sufficient. He was counting lead classes when he first started going to the West and doing lead classes. They were 8 breaths. The whole class was 8 breaths in all the postures, not 5.
Yeah. I've looked at it. There's a lead class on YouTube somewhere that Guruji is doing, and he's pretty quick with his counting, isn't he? It's like...
I always had this sense that Guruji would look at the individual or the group of individuals who have come together, and he would change things based on that.
Totally.
In later years, maybe just Guruji's getting older, and
I suppose this was the class with Richard Freeman in and some of the other guys. So
more advanced practitioners. Do they need to stay in it as long?
yeah,
Maybe not.
they're already there.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
But I watched Guruji and Sharat both deal with people with injuries, and they modified things and they changed things. And of course, that's a slippery slope, especially in the Ashtanga world. It's like, oh well, if you modify anything, you're breaking the rules, and tradition is off. But I don't know. I also, I look at what Guruji was doing, and I know when my teacher went to Mysore the first time, the locals were practicing in the morning, and they were all doing different sequences. And so Guruji was teaching to the student at that point. But a bunch of healthy Westerners show up and, just make them move. Especially...
Experiment, maybe.
Yeah, I like to believe he called it the Research Institute originally for a reason. Why put the word research in there if there's not some bit of research going on? Like, implying that it's not complete, it's not finished, there's experimentation to some degree or another going on. So, if you take that, you can use that as a rationalization to then research in your practice, and people do that. It's not for me to say that's right or wrong. From a therapeutic side, does it make sense? Sure. It absolutely does. But you also have to have, the right information and the right amount of knowledge to be doing the research in an intelligent way, and not using it as a way of avoiding or... That's
and we have that thing of gravitating towards stuff that we're good at and that we like, don't we? So we would generally cut out the stuff that we don't like. And
it's what I love about a set sequence. You can't avoid the stuff you don't like. You have to figure out a way to make it your friend.